Okay. Did you know that people still wear suspenders? Yeah, so every time somebody comes into the shop and they want to add suspender buttons to their pants, we secretly panic, because the truth is, there are enough people that still wear suspenders. All ages. I mean, it's coming back around. The thing is, the placement of the suspender buttons is absolutely like a deep, dark secret that no one talks about. So, great news, today's the day. We're gonna put these little cuties on these pants. Let's start with the type of button. There is a designated type of suspender button. What makes it special is that the top is flat and the bottom is slightly more curved, really accentuated. And that's because the loop of the suspender is going to loop under that part, and it raises it up off of the waistband so that that part of the suspender can seep. The most common type are still going to be coming up over the shoulder and having 2 fasteners on either side of the front and 1 in the back, all Y-shaped. That's gonna be the most common, which means we need 6 buttons. So we're gonna put 4 across the front and 2 across the back. Now, let's mark out where they go. We're gonna start at the back of the pant. We're looking at the center back seam here, starting at the waist and going down the seam. So, now that we're oriented, we're gonna start by putting our marks on either side on the inside of the pant. This is really important because suspenders are gonna fasten on the inside so that you can't really see the loops, and then they'll come up and of course up over the shoulder. I'm gonna start right here at the center back seam on the inside, like I said, but let me be very clear again. These measurements are measurements that I use just because I use them. They're not necessarily a standard. It's just that I like them aesthetically. So I like a 3-inch spread. That's what we're gonna use for each of the 3 sets of buttons that we place, which means the halfway point is 1.5 inches. I'm gonna put that 1.5 inches right there on the center back seam inside, and then I'm literally just gonna come out to my 3 and my 0 point and make my little marks. I also am generally putting these, I'm using a heat erasable pen as usual, because I can't use my white chalk on a white waistband. But now you can see 3-inch spread, time to attach the buttons. We've just put our marking placements on either side of the center back seam. Now, one really important key. When we're working with suit pants specifically, most of the time they're gonna have that flip up style waistband. Let me show you what I mean. Literally, this waistband is loosely attached in a blind hem stitch all the way around, but you can open it basically. In fact, I think we even took in this pant already, so that's all of the extra that's already in the back. The important part about this is that we're gonna attach the buttons through the waistband, but not all the way through to the outside, because we don't wanna see that thread pockmark. Now, theoretically, the pant should be tight enough against the skin that this isn't going to flip up. However, after we finish these buttons, we're actually going to come back through and put a nice little stay stitch, hidden, stitch in the ditch style in this center back seam. So this is great. If you've got a stitch that's holding this waistband down in the back, cut that now so that you can get in behind it with your thread. Now you'll see that I'm using black thread, and really that's just to match the buttons because again, we are not sewing through to the outside of the pant. And so I'd rather match the thread to the button because I think that'll look the cleanest. And then of course you'll notice that as usual, I will put my knot on the upper side of the waistband because I'm gonna cover it with these buttons. Now, important note about our little fancy specific suspender buttons. We are gonna be putting the rounded bottom of the button against the pant when we do this. So I am gonna do a regular perpendicular sew across and then across versus a parallel. I just think it's nice and strong. And I'm gonna give that, because I've already got my 4 threads since they're doubled over, I'm gonna go 2 times through each hole perpendicular to itself. So there is already 8 threads in, and then again on the other side. The carefulness of the stitching on the underside of the waistband, I mean, it's important, it's always important, but no one's gonna see it. So I'm not taking a ton of time to get my stitches exactly on top of each other in this case. I'm just kind of throwing it on. Okay, I've gone through twice and twice. So now I'm gonna come back up through, but not come through any of the buttonholes. I'm gonna come up to the side there with my needle. And then this is a really important part. I'm gonna take this thread and I am going to wrap it 3 times really tight around the stitching, but under the button. So watch very carefully. 1, 2, 3. This is creating a really tight, stable thread shank. That's really important again because these are gonna get heavy use, a lot of tension. So we really wanna make sure that everything is super strong. Then I'm gonna pass my needle back through that thread shank that I just created. But before that loop gets too far in, I'm gonna put my needle through and I'm just going to tie off just like I normally would. And one more time, exactly the same thing. Pass my needle through the thread shank. Pull it nice and smooth. I don't want any loose threads or gaps here. I want everything to be really tight and really smooth. Pass my needle through again. And this is just creating a second knot on top of that first one. Awesome. And then sliding my thread and needle through the fabric just to hide the tails because I always love doing that. That's all. Okay, now let's do that for the other button on just the other side, and then we'll jump up to the front. Okay, we've jumped to the front of the pant, and this is where, again, I'm gonna give you measurements, but it's also sort of, I'm using landmarks. That's how I'm gonna say it. So first, close the zip, and we're gonna use the fly, the actual zipper of the fly, as our center front seam, because it is. I'm gonna fold the pant right at that center front seam and match up my side seams. Okay, actually, I'm even gonna pin them together. And the reason that I'm doing this is because all pants are different, so I don't want to give you a measurement off of the center front because if the pants are much bigger, the buttons will be too close. If the pants are much smaller, they'll be too far away. You get the idea. So instead, we're positioning them appropriate to the size of the pant, no matter what the size of the pant is. Okay, so we've got our front. Again, side seam here, center here. Then, in a very technical move, I'm gonna fold it. I'm gonna line up the zipper with my side seam to give me this new center. It's like a quartering, sort of. I'm gonna put a pin right there and then open it back up. Okay. I'm gonna remove this pin so that we're not confused. And now you can see this is the half center. If you have pleats in your pant, this might be a little bit easier because you could use the pleats as a landmark, but that's not as common anymore. And so I wanted to use this flat front because it's gonna be the most common pant that you're gonna be looking at with this. So again, side seam, center front, and now center of that. I'm gonna flip and put a pin on the other side as well so that I can open these back up. That'll make that easier for me. All right, zipper is still closed. And now, when you're looking at this, I'm gonna admit to you, depending on the way that the pant closes, the width of the fly itself, the stitching, everything, these may not look like they're in the centers, but they are. They are proportional to the pant. So you just wanna trust these different points and mark them and go with it, even though maybe, does it look right? Yes, you know that it is because we did the fold, fold, and it is going to look right. Also, buttons are on the inside, so don't worry that much. We've got our mark there. We're gonna flip to the inside of the waistband, and I'm gonna take this pin and actually stick it all the way through. That again is giving me that center point inside of the waistband. And now we're gonna treat that pin there like it's our center back seam. It's giving us the center anchor, but it's not actually where we're gonna sew the buttons. We're gonna use that pin to measure our 3-inch spread off of that. So let's grab our ruler. Center pin here, and then again, measuring our 3-inch spread off of that. So I am just lining up my 1.5-inch marker right there, and then making my 2 little marks on either side at 3 and 0. Now in this case, that is getting right here close to our tag. I don't think that matters. If that's something you think that the customer would care about or the person would care about, you could go ahead and move that, but honestly, I'm gonna sew the button right to it because you know what? It's on the inside, so it's gonna be fine. Now I can actually take this pin out because that doesn't matter anymore. We were just using it as our anchor to get these other 2 points. And now we are ready to again put our buttons right in those spots. Now, this is actually a great example to show you. This is the internal button. It's just helping hold the fly closed behind the zipper. Notice the difference between these buttons. This is just a good example to show you the differences of a suspender button and just a regular button. Not really a huge deal, just kind of a great example. Awesome. Now, we're gonna get threaded up again, and I'm gonna lift this to show you. This is attached a little bit more than the back waistband was. So we've got some blind stitching here, but we're still able to fold up about half of the waistband. Again, we are going to be sewing only through this internal section, not all the way through, because we really don't want those thread pock marks right in the middle of that waistband. That totally ruins our smooth, beautiful vibe. So we are gonna, again, put them only internally. I'm gonna start from the front. Really, this is actually the inside, so that's not quite accurate, but that's okay. And I'm gonna come back up and sew exactly the same way that I did on the back, with the rounded edge down against the pant and coming up through each of the sets of buttonholes twice. Here we go. I'm going to be a little bit more careful to try to keep all of my stitching in one place because if the waistband flips up, yeah, it's a little more visible. So let's try to keep it pretty, folks. And careful not to pull too much. This blind hemming is kind of delicate and will often start to come away. It's not a huge deal, but it is very hard to reset. So try not to pull too much here. I'm trying to keep everything sort of close to itself. Ooh, see how I caught that there? I'm gonna snip that off so that I don't catch that. Great. And then one more time up through. So 8 strands of thread total in each direction. Perfect. And then just like the back, we're gonna come up through and create that nice thread shank. 1, 2, 3. And then I just use my button, use my finger to push the button away when I'm coming back in through here to knot the thread off. And I'm getting a little bit close to the end of my thread here, so let's see if I can make it. I think I will. I'm always gonna double knot though. This really needs to be secure. We don't want these to pop off and they're gonna be under a lot of pressure. And then hide my little tails like I normally do. Slippery little needle here. And cut that off. Beautiful. Okay, now I'm gonna jump over and place our second one over here, and then we're gonna do the same thing on the other side. Last step, as promised, we're back over at the machine at our center back seam. So remember, we've got our buttons on either side, but this little flap is still able to move, and we want to secure that. So I'm gonna slide this center back seam of the waistband directly under with a nice matching thread color, and I'm gonna hold everything smooth and just put a couple of stitches in. I'm at a 2.5 or 3 on stitch length, and I'm gonna literally just do that. And that's gonna, oh, I'll trim that thread too. And that's just gonna hold that waistband down and keep everything nice and secure. Let's give that a real quick press. So really, we're just gonna press this for funsies, because anytime that I mess with the waistband or anything, or really sew at all, I like to iron. So now, final reveal. Dun, 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 dun. We've got these in the center, these guys up front, and on the other side. And we are all good to get fastened up. Okay, again, 3-inch spread. I do that universally for each pair. In this one, I'm doing 6 buttons, which is relatively common, but depending on your type of suspender, you're still gonna use the same type of buttons, which is that rounded bottom and flat top. And I think traditionally they really only come in like maybe black and white, so don't worry that much about the color, because remember, it's on the inside. Thank you so much for joining me. Ask me questions, like, subscribe, do all the things, and I'll see you soon.